I attended Tire X Street Survival. It's a teen driving clinic. It's really cool. They taught us all about like the limits of our cars. So you drive in and immediately they just tell you to take everything that could fly and will fly out of your car. They had us take out everything that like wasn't stowed away in the glove boxes. So all my CarPlay stuff was out the window. No music. So you walk up to this tent and you say your name, you sign like the whole possibility of risk documents, and then they give you this wristband. There were both like the driver meetings between like the teachers, and then there were their meetings with us where we were introduced to our teachers. And mine's name was John. He was really cool. But after I got introduced to John, they let us out to our cars and they were like, hey, you gotta check the tire pressure. So they taught us where our tire pressure is like located, like where it shows what our tire pressure number should be. And it's on like the inside panel of the door. We checked all our tire pressures after we learned what our tire pressures were supposed to be. Because we had driven like an hour there, all of mine were at 40, except for one of them. That one was a little low, so we pumped it up while we were there, so I got to learn how to do that as well. So after all that was ready, and after we had prepared my car, he hopped in with me and we drove it down to this lower area, this giant lot, and they had cones set up. And so our first task was to accelerate all the way, like as fast as we could, and then when we hit a certain point, they would tell us to stop, and then we'd have to like slam on the brakes, and it was so that we could feel like what ABS feels like in the pedal, and like that sort of vibrating as it like keeps the wheels from locking up. And I thought that was really interesting, and it definitely was something that I've never dealt with in my car before, so it was really educational just to be able to learn like this is what my car can handle, this is how it stops really fast, and this is how quickly it can speed up. They made us go through the braking just maneuver at least 4 times, I think it was. And we, like every single time, it was just to get better. Because a lot of us were very hesitant on our first tries. Like we've never sped up our cars this fast only to like slam on the brakes. It takes a while for you to like build up the courage to go super duper crazy fast, not lay off the brakes, and then to just slam on it like last second. So they were building up our confidence by making us do it multiple times over. After we did the brake exercise, we had a class session where they took us inside and taught us all about like the different risks of driving. They had like a really interesting PowerPoint that talked about who's most likely to get into crashes, why you'd most likely get into crashes. They also walked us through like the other maneuvers we'd be doing that day, which was super helpful because they just tell you ahead of time so that you're like mentally preparing for it. The man who was talking to us, I remember that he made us guess what % of teen drivers will get into an accident at least once. And a lot of people were like, oh, 50, 60, pretty high numbers. No, it's 87. Like that was the number. I think was it 89? I think it was 89.
I thought it was 80.
It was 80? I thought it was like right before 90 because somebody guessed like 90.
We probably should have been listening better. But it's still, even if it's 80, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's above 80. It's above 80%. It's like 80 or above. Like we talked about bad drivers that we know, and that was a pretty funny session. Because we were talking about like, oh, well, this one guy in the mall was dealing with road rage. Then we talked about road rage and why it's like really important not to give in to road rage and like let that control you. He was looking for mainly experiences that we dealt with on the road where we'd already put on like trials to see how well we could evade situations. Like we were looking for those bad situations so that we could assess them and be like, well, what could I have done? And that was really cool, like being able to look back on that, because sometimes you don't look back and think. And he was applying it to what we were doing that day, saying as in like, this is going to make you a better driver in the long run. So after we finished the class session, we went right back out to the test track. They had us do like basically donuts. We had a skid circle They had this inner ring of cones and the skid circle, and then an outer ring. And between the inner and outer ring, they laid down like this material to help the cars skid more easily. I think they said it was like some sort of corn-based product. I'm not exactly sure. It looked like Sanini. It was to help our cars spin out more easily, so we could like fully feel understeer and oversteer. When I went into the circle, my instructor was telling me to like not be afraid to put foot on the gas. Like, he wanted me to go fast, but to keep it in control. So whenever I started to slide, he'd be like, all right, now don't completely pull your foot off. Don't like yank at the wheel. Don't like, accelerate faster. Stay calm, slowly back off the gas. And it's really interesting because you can really feel the car jerk when like it comes out of whatever it's doing. So it was always pretty abrupt and it didn't always feel nice, but like at least you had more control than like you originally thought you did. What I felt with my car, one, was pretty limited because I was like also really like freaking out myself because I'd never done this before. Definitely with the brakes, I always felt the ABS system coming in whenever it felt like I was losing control. I remember at one point in the circle, I actually oversteered so much that the car thought that we were going to crash. So what it did automatically was that it tightened up my seatbelt and the window went up. And I remember just going, oh, like my car's got me. Like I'm okay. If I crash, like it's going to make sure I'm safe in the car. And I thought that was really interesting. So the next exercise after the skid circle was this exercise where we were supposed to drive really, really fast, and then when we got to the top, we had to make a turn either right or left. And if you were on the left side, you had to do the turn left. If you were on the right side, you had to do the turn right. But if you were in the middle, your instructor was telling you last minute which way you were turning. And John definitely made sure that I knew last minute. I hit quite a few cones during this exercise. Right away, as soon as we got in the cars, the instructors were like, hey, don't be afraid to hit the cones. They're soft. They're not going to damage your car. So, yeah, apparently, like, they told us stories and stuff just to make us feel a little more at ease about how, like, cones had gotten stuck in the wheel wells, and actually, like, the cones had taken more damage than the cars, and that like, really made us feel a lot better about what we were doing. So we were a lot more fearless because of it. We had a really amazing animated instructor who like just went out of his way to make us all laugh and smile. So I know he really liked my car, mostly for the color, Cumulus Blue. And so jokingly times when he'd send me off, he'd be like, go at it, Cumulus, or like stuff like that. He'd be like, go, Cumulonimbus. And like whenever we hit the cars, he was like, no, my children, my babies. And it was just really funny because like you got this guy over here who's like sending us out to the races, like pretending to wave a flag. Like he even had a flag at times, like a little racing flag. He'd be like, go, he'd get super animated with it. And like that just gave us energy and it made us feel more at ease. Like it's so helpful to have staff there that are just absolutely going out of their way. And like these people volunteered to go there on a Sunday when in like 90 something degree weather. They did not have to be out there, but they were. And they were really pushing it so that we'd have a good time. Cone collectors. They told me what they were called. So we had these people going out there, and John, my instructor, told me that they're called like cone shaggers. Because they run out and they replace the cones that get knocked over, or like they pick them up and put them back into place. And the entire time we had this solo MVP. I don't even know his name, but he was like the main guy, the main cone guy. And every single time somebody knocked something over, he was running out there automatically to pull it back up so that the next person could head out. So this guy, he's operating out there through like a full heat wave in the morning and then a full-on storm in the afternoon. He was out there in all weather just helping us out, and like, man, I have never been more grateful for some random guy in my life because he made that entire experience so much better, and I didn't even learn his name. I feel really guilty about that. After we were out there for a bit longer, we went for lunch. Wawa Hoagie Fest was lunch. That was very good. I very much enjoyed Wawa Hoagie Fest. So after lunch, we went back just to see an airbag thing real quickly. They wanted to show us how powerful an airbag really is. because we had talked about that in the first classroom session, was how powerful an airbag is and like why you should be careful of where your arms are placed right before a crash, but while keeping them on the wheel. And also they taught us to lower the wheels so that like the airbag is faced towards your chest instead of your face, because you would not believe like the strength at which these things go off. People compare them to explosions. There was literally a chemical explosion going on inside that thing before it like poofs. So they pulled out an extra airbag from a track car, and they set it up with a cone on top of it. And they made us guess. They were like, hey, how high do you think this cone's gonna go between like these two giant industrial light posts? And a couple people were like, it's gonna go over the light posts. And I was like, I think it's gonna go under. So they set up these wires and they stood like a good 10 feet away from it for safety purposes, which I think should have been my clue that like it wasn't going to be under the light posts. When it went off, it flew like a good 2 stories in the air. Like the cone, it sent the cone flying. And there was literally smoke coming out of the airbag. After the airbag demonstration ended, they took group 1 back up to the classroom. And at this point, you could start to feel like the wind coming in because it was starting to get a bit more rainy. And as we entered, the first few drops started to fall. And we were like, oh my gosh, great, we're gonna be practicing in the rain now. After we did this classroom session. For this classroom session, we talked about like blind spots as well as like visibility stuff, what you should be aware of on the side of the road, and why speeding is like a leading cause for accidents. Actually, they talked about this too. While we were out, like especially with blind spots for big like trucks, like 8-wheelers, they had actually brought out a truck and they had cars situated around it in the different spaces you would be while on the highway. It's insane how blind some of these truck drivers are. Like, not to say that like most of the truck drivers out there, they're really good because they know how to navigate on these roads. But if your car is right next to them, there's like a giant blind spot between the front of the truck and the back of the truck where that driver just cannot see you, which is why you want to pass it quickly. There's also like a blind spot right in front of the truck, which is why like these trucks take a lot of time to slow down because they have so much mass. So if you're in front of this truck and you stop in front of this truck, you're getting like hit because it's going to take a while. That's why you don't dart out in front of them on like highways, because if traffic starts to slow down, that truck's slamming into you. Same thing goes around with the back of the truck. They can't see you if you're right behind them. So if they start braking and you're not prepared for it, you're tailgating them, buddy, they don't even see you tailgating them. We saw photos of it where like a woman had been on her phone and her car had run into the back of an 8-wheeler. And actually like the woman had been like, her head's gone and she was still holding her phone.
Gross.
They didn't show us photos of that. They just showed us photos of the total car. So don't worry, it was, you know. Our next thing that we did after we got out of the classroom, when it was still wet outside, pretty damp, light rain, was we were going to do like slaloms, which is basically weaving in and out of cones. Like, you know, when they put like, and if you've ever watched like dog shows or dog, when like they have the racing event, they'll have like the little cones lined up and the dog goes between the cones like this. So we were doing that with our cars, basically. And we were weaving them. And I remember he told me, the instruction my teacher gave me, John, he told me that I had to stick close to the cones and that I should be like doing hard turns, staying close. I can keep up my speed if I do that, but I need to be able to weave really quickly. So he was like, you need to stay close to the cone, stay snug, remember to brake as you're turning at the end and coming back around, and don't be afraid to speed up. Don't be afraid to hit the cones. And that was really, it was worth it because I had such a fun time with that, and it taught me like how much my car can handle on wet ground, as well as like it was raining gently. Before we even got to this point, I feel the need to mention that my instructor John recognized that like I was not very aware of the dimensions of my car, that I had been relying a little too heavily on parking sensors. And like that's completely understandable given that my car is pretty new to me. I've been using it for about like 2 months now. So I did not know where the front 2 parts of my car were. I was afraid to hit stuff. One, because like car's a beautiful color. I don't want to scratch that paint. So he laid out the cones for me actually, and we broke away from the classroom early so that I could hit
the cones. Like the first classroom we did, he had us leave early so that I could learn where the cones were. He made me slowly like inch up and hit the cone with the front of my car, and like having the parking sensor go off so that I knew how much time I had, like how much space was there with the parking sensors. And he would have me like hit one cone, back up, and hit another. And it was because he noticed that I was taking turns poorly. Well, not that I was doing them poorly, just that I was taking them as if my car was bigger than it was. I thought that was really awesome that he was able to recognize that, as well as like the way that he was able to help me with it, because I'm a lot better at taking turns now. I am so much of a better driver because of that. And it helped a lot when we went into this like slalom exercises, as well as like the emergency lane change exercises. After slalom was the emergency lane change exercises, and the really fun animated guy was back for that, thank goodness. We had learned that during the emergency turnoffs that my car accelerates really, really fast. So we had to move up an extra cone. So one of the things that we decided to do for this is, well, I'm not gonna get that extra reaction time in real life, so let's just let my car go. And like the entire time we were going through all these different things, we were shifting between like dynamic and auto. Dynamic is like my more sporty mode with my car, where it tightens up the suspension, like the steering, as well as like different parts of the car. And auto is the more comfort mode. So we were trying all of these experiences in both. And I found that for the emergency lane change, like there wasn't much of a difference for many of the other experiences, but for the emergency lane change, especially because it was raining, I was really struggling like on auto to get it to like steer the way that I wanted it to. So that was when dynamic came in more handy, but that's not what I'd normally be driving on. So that made me think, and I was like, well, I gotta learn how to do both. So learning how to do auto with the emergency lane change, the first time we did an emergency lane change, I pulled off the turn well, but like I had backed off. I wasn't being as brave about it as I should have been. And I was being really hesitant. So the second one, he's like, go all in. So I did. And I forgot to hit the brakes coming out of it. So I slammed into a lot of cones. The third time I managed to hit the brakes on time and we did great. And I did that in auto instead of dynamic. But I think it's important to like note the differences. Halfway through, I think after the first like emergency lane change one I did, it really started to pour. They were basically showing us how to do quick lane changes, like emergency lane changes in really heavy rain. And that was stressful. So it was fun, but it was very stressful. Like you gotta keep a steady head in these situations and you gotta stay calm. And that's something that they taught us, is that like you need to be calm, level mind, like you're gonna be okay as long as you believe you're gonna be okay. My car handled shockingly well in the rain. I thought that I would be drifting more than I was, but I really wasn't. And I think it made me realize that like my car is a lot more capable than like I give it credit for. And this entire thing really helped me figure that out. This event that I went to, I'm so glad I took this street survival to school. I'm gonna be such a better driver. Like I trust myself more on the road now. I'm less anxious when I go out for drives. This definitely gave me a ton of confidence. Like before I started driving really late, and this was like a personal thing because I didn't have confidence in myself as a driver. I thought that I was going to hurt a car. I thought I was going to hurt somebody else. Like after taking this, it's definitely given me the confidence of like, no, I'm not going to hurt somebody else as long as I don't panic. As long as I'm like, I have my head on my shoulders, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to do okay. 10 out of 10. Would recommend this program for other young drivers. It was amazing. If you can find a street school like where you live, it's a game changer. Like you're gonna get on the road after this and you're gonna feel so much more confident than you ever did at the beginning. Like you're gonna know how to handle yourself. You get into bad situations where you need to brake. It's once you build up sort of a tolerance for that sort of braking, that sort of like when you start building up a tolerance for the panic, that's I think when like your rationality starts to set in better. And I think I've also built up the amount of rationality I have while driving, just because I'm able to handle that panic now. While I was there, I did make friends. It was really nice. The friends I made, I mostly picked them out by their cars and like how they were driving. There was this one girl who was really sweet. She drove like this golden Camry. And so I just called her Camry until like I knew that her name was so I still have her number. We talk, which is really nice. And there was this other kid who drove a Mini Cooper, and he was doing great. I think he was probably, of all the cars, his Mini Cooper was really fun to watch for everybody, because whenever he slammed on his gas pedal, the wheels would just spin and you'd hear the squeal like across the parking lot. So when this ended, when we had graduated this driving school, they had this little graduation ceremony where we all came indoors, and then they handed out our little graduation certificates. Yeah, this is mine.
Best part about this, hey parents, if your kid does this and you give it to the insurance company, they'll give you a discount. I know my dad's really excited about that. Apparently kids are expensive.
I'd like to thank TireRack, the BMW club, and like all the volunteers who came out, as well as like the people at the college who offered up that space. Like, I'd like to thank them for this, because they've made a safer driver on the road. Hello, that's me. And two, like, I'm so much more confident now. Like, I thanks to them, I have confidence that I honestly never would have had if I hadn't done this. Audi Club does have its own programs, but there aren't any like specifically near us, so we decided to do this. So BMW Club actually for this partners with Porsche Club and other clubs. It's not just about like you gotta drive a BMW, you gotta drive a Porsche. Like, it's for any kids with any cars, because it's just about getting the education out there. Because it's really important to have like our next generation as capable like drivers. I really enjoyed myself. I told them at the beginning that I was going to be super hesitant. By the end of it, I was the kid out there that was revving her engine the most and going as speedily as she could. I have to admit, when my dad first came to me and asked me if I wanted to do this, I was not sold on the idea. I thought I was going to wreck my car. I thought I was going to like scratch the paint. Again, love my color. But like, I didn't think I was gonna do well. I thought I was gonna hit something. I thought I was gonna spin out of control, like I'd flip my car. Like somebody was gonna get hurt, and it might be me. And I was really worried about that. And I honestly should not have been, because nothing like that happened. And that was all very irrational fear. I very much went from nervous and apprehensive to like confident and enjoying myself. Like, I was laughing through most of it. I was screaming happy screams when we went around on that skid ring, which I think was probably the most fun thing I've ever done in my life. And I remember I started laughing when my car freaked out and rolled up the windows because she thought we were going to crash. And I was like, oh, haha, you really thought. So I'd do it again.
Yeah, well, maybe we will. There's another one. They do one down at Summit Point Racetrack in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Where it's like higher stakes because you're on a racetrack. So
Mina's racing is not through yet. I'm going to the racetracks next. Y'all better watch out.